This is Gideon.
Well, welcome to Tanakh Talk. What's your question for the rabbi?
There is 613 laws, but I would like the rabbi to explain what is a statute, what is an ordinance, the judgments, and the commandments, because some people get confused that it's only 613 laws, but they don't realize there's certain things that, like for Pesach and tabernacles, and there's certain thing that governs them. I'd just like him to explain that. I got some folks here listening to, and they want to try to understand a little bit deeper about the 613 laws.
Perfect. That's a great question. I'm sure there's plenty of us here would like to know as well.
Right. So I'd like to pick out a passage which I think would be excellent for that.
Rabbi, I'm going to, if it's okay with both of you, can we go ahead and disconnect, and that way you can go ahead and unmute and listen in, and it'll free the phone lines up. Okay. Thank you, Gideon.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
So I encourage you to look at Leviticus 26, verse 46. In that passage, we actually have a reference to the oral Torah, because it actually describes Torahs in the plural. It's not a common, it is not a typical phrase that's used.
What verse was that, Rabbi?
Leviticus 26, verse 46.
Got
I think that would be that's a really terrific passage, so that we can separate different types of laws. I wanted to share something about the Hebrew language for the listeners, which I think might surprise people. The English language is a very large language. I don't know if there's something like 750,000 words, but most people don't use more than 50,000. The Hebrew language, conversely, is very, very tiny. It's a very small lexicon. And that's why it's very compact for many reasons. And biblical Hebrew is extremely tight. Words also, Hebrew words can mean do mean many things. Some words can have 15 different meanings. When you see, therefore, with the Torah, where biblical Hebrew is so concise and there's such a small vocabulary, so when you see different names for anything, that is a huge red flag. Pay careful attention here, because this is the word of God, and therefore there is no excess here. So in this passage we see Ele hachukim v'hamishpatim b'hat, and these are the chukim. That's one kind of law. I don't know how your English translation will translate that. Bahamishpatim, maybe statutes.
It's kind of simple. In fact, you could probably guess how it is, knowing what you know about the New Testament. But basically, it says these are the decrees, the laws, and the regulations.
Okay, so those words actually mean nothing. That means what happened in any translation. What would I do? You can't it's not the Christian fault here. You can't. It doesn't work, because it actually requires. It requires an explanation in order to understand the difference between we have two different kinds of laws that come into view here. One is the chukim, a chok, that's one kind of law, and it doesn't make a difference how you translate it. The translation, what is a statute? It means nothing. It means some sort of law, but it doesn't mean, what is different? So what they're doing is they're just using synonyms. You can reverse them, you could splash them, it means nothing. As I've said to the listeners, if you do not read the Hebrew, you are kissing God through a towel. And the translators really can't. Let's say I was translating the Bible. What would I do? I couldn't do a thing. The only thing is I would put notes on the bottom to explain it. There are no words for this in the English language, and the reason for this is that in the secular world, the only kinds of laws that exist or should exist are laws that make sense, that are reasoned, right? So, but that is not the case in Tanakh. Actually Torah, the prophets and writings do not introduce new laws. That's important. There's no new law in Isaiah. So all 613 commandments are only found in the 5 books of Moses. The oral Torah The oral Torah does not introduce another law, does not add a law, but rather it's the subtext and tells us how to apply it. That said, so when the verse begins, Eila HaChukim, these are the, let's just say it says in your thing, commandments or laws, whatever translation, a chok means a law that is beyond it, that the human mind can't really fully understand and apprehend. Okay, so chukim are laws that we cannot understand completely. As a great rabbi once said, a God that I completely understand, I cannot worship. But God is giving us spiritual laws, not laws that relate to the laws of thermodynamics, the central laws of physics and so on, but these are spiritual laws. Now, there have been rabbis who have written extensive works giving us philosophical understandings of why perhaps we should not eat pork, why certain birds are unclean. But these laws are called chukim, and that means that we do not understand, certainly prima facie, at first glance, of why there's a prohibition of eating certain animals, or why. We don't know. It's a chok. So that's one kind of law. And then there are mishpatim. Mishpatim are those laws that are, let's say, maybe called judgments in your translation, are those laws that make complete sense to us. Or maybe a better way of describing this, some commandments, we kind of know there's something wrong with it, but we can't explain why. And in other commandments, we certainly can understand. So mishpatim would be commandments, laws, judgments, whatever word you want to use. It means that those like murder, that a person shouldn't steal, a person shouldn't take property that doesn't belong to him or her, a person should not sleep with his neighbor's wife. These are mishpatim, and that's the general breakdown, the two major categories of laws, those that we understand, those that we don't fully understand the reason for it, or the Bible is silent on it, or we just don't have the receptor. We're speaking now over an internet. I believe this internet is in the air, but I can't explain it, but I can see how it manifests itself.
Sure.
So that's the difference between the two.
Okay.